Hi, this is Jim. It is Labor Day. That means it's Monday, September 6th, 2020. Time for your COVID-19 update for Georgia, and I'm throwing in a little extra analysis today. We'll start with the daily numbers. Pretty low, about what I expected for a holiday. Tests were only half of what they were last week. If you think about that from the perspective of who wants to find a testing site and have a swab shoved up their nose on a Friday or Saturday of a holiday weekend, it makes sense that this is down. Cases followed it as well. So if you think about it from a cases perspective, we actually had 608 cases, which is the first time we have been under 1,000 cases a day since June 8th. Now, that doesn't mean our average is below 1,000 cases a day. It's just we had 1 day's worth of data that said that. How do we do compared to Memorial Day? So on Memorial Day, we saw Sunday to Monday drop 28%. Here on Labor Day, we've seen Sunday to Monday drop 63%. So a much more significant drop. There's so many things you could potentially read into it that I'm not even going to try and say, it's testing fatigue, or it's people staying away from testing, or it's just fewer labs open to do the analysis. You pick one. And it's more, it's as likely to be right, or at least partially right, as any of the other ones. So I think it'll be Wednesday before we see the data start to normalize a little bit off the holiday weekend. So let's stay tuned for that and see where that comes in as we get into the week. I do think that 6.6% of positive tests is a positive, because if you were sick enough to go get a test, you would think there would be more of a likelihood that that would be a COVID positive. Being as it only came back as 6.6%, it's less likely. So that's one on the good side for us, I think, today. Active hospitalizations stayed flat for today. New hospitalizations were down. This is a very manual report, so I would have been shocked if this was up. It was down 17 week over week. That makes total sense based on the holiday. So, all the asterisks I'm putting in here, hopefully you can hear them, is it's a holiday, it's a holiday, it's a holiday. Don't count on any of this data because it's a holiday. All right. As far as active hospitalizations, that was flat. Hitting on the CCU data real quick, we picked up 20 beds in use, but those seem to fall mostly across the board. We continue to have Athens and Tift region in the red. Oconee region is back in the red as well. So Region E, Region H, and Region L continue to be the hot spots there. Interestingly, Region M, when you look at the beds in use for just normal COVID cases, that seems to be a hot spot there. So not a lot of CCU cases, but still a lot of beds in use from a percentage perspective for COVID. So interesting to see what's kind of happening down towards the southeast Georgia corner, Okefenokee, and getting towards Jacksonville area. So something to keep an eye out for next week as you're looking at data. If you hear that pops up as a hotspot, you heard it here first. All right. Since I am going to be gone the rest of the week, I did want to get one other piece of weekly data in. This is the federal scoreboard chart. So you hear about this from various reports weekly. Right now, according to my numbers, we are at about 130 new cases per day per 100,000 residents. We want that to be less than 100 in order to feel like we're in a healthy state. And it seems to be flattening out a little bit. Maybe it's just a holiday week. But we doesn't really seem to be seeing the decline we were seeing through the month of August. So I would keep an eye on that and maybe we're flattening out. And then similarly with the percent of tests that are coming back positive, that is right up and down around the 10% range. I think it was 9.3 as of today. We want it. That's it. Great. It's in the yellow. We want this in the green. That would get us down below 5%. But I think it will be a while before we see that fall into the green. All right. If you were just interested in the metrics, stop here. Go on to your next video. Go watch Fail Army or Adam Savage Make Something or whatever else you want to do. If you'd like to hear some analysis on the deaths and the way they're being reported, don't touch that remote or keyboard or dial or whatever you're using to watch YouTube. All right, let me get into it. Yesterday I mentioned that I thought it was curious that we had hit a milestone for deaths once again on a weekend. And I've talked about this a couple of times before, even going back to kind of quote The West Wing, where Friday is dump day and you share all the bad news and those kind of things. And while I felt like that was the case, I never really had something that I felt like I could point to and say, see, that's what I mean. Now I feel like I do. I took a look at every time we passed 1,000 deaths in Georgia. Obviously, that's 6 times. I also added passing 500 because that would have been a milestone the first time it happened, and then passing 2,500 because that's a fairly round number that people use. So I picked 8 data samples to say, here are places where somebody in the media may go, oh, look, we passed this milestone number today, and wanted to see where they fell. When I wanted to see where they fell, I was looking at this specifically from a day of the week perspective. So the first thing I did was I took every day of the week and I sorted them through and I said, what percentage of deaths are reported on that day? Because theoretically, the more deaths that are reported on that day, it is more likely that we will have and pass a milestone on that day. Right? Makes sense. Okay, Tuesdays are the days that we have the most death reports. 1 in 5 death reports happens on a Tuesday, and on a Tuesday, we have seen 3 milestones passed. Now, the interesting thing about that is the Tuesdays that we've seen the milestones passed are when we passed 500, when we passed 1,000, and 2,500. So that hasn't happened since we've really seen that spike. So even though we're racing with higher cases faster and we had 1,800 deaths last month, we didn't see a milestone report come through on a Tuesday. Kind of curious in itself. But hey, 1 in 7 chance if you think of it that way. If you think of it that way and really just go, milestone could fall on any day, right? There's a 1 in 7 chance of that. Then each one of these columns would have a 1 next to it, and one of them would have a 2 because I'm doing 8 samples. That's not the case either. In fact, if you look at the fairly average days of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, of those 3 days of the week, there was only 1 report the whole time, even though that makes up 45%, almost half of the deaths reported were reported on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, yet we only passed a milestone 1 time. Kind of weird, 1 out of 8. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially when you now go back in and now look at Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday account for 1 in every 5 death reports. They account for 4 out of 8 milestones. When you start to get to this level of inconsistency, you start to really wonder what is driving this. And I will say, and I'm sure that, one of my friends who's a statistician can do the math and say there is a, 3.2% of this happening in this way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying that this couldn't happen this way. What I'm saying is it's so inconsistent and so unlikely that it's becoming a strain of belief. So let's look at this from two sides. If I say, gee, look at this statistical anomaly, let's watch the next 3 milestones we pass and see where this fills in, and maybe, one will come on a Wednesday and one will come on a Friday, and it'll start to even out the distribution. Okay, that's the coin flip approach, and eventually a coin flip is going to get to 50-50. But I feel like with 8 data points now, we've got enough to say this is a weird trend that's not average, that is intentionally being manipulated. I'm going to use the word intentionally. If it's intentionally being manipulated, so these milestones are passed on the weekend, why? Well, there is a benefit to Governor Kemp and the folks at the Department of Public Health, Dr. Toomey, to be able to not be around, not answer the phone, not have their press people around on a day like this. Not as many people work at the AJC on the weekends. Not as many people work at your local TV station on the weekends than do during the week and produce all that news. So if this happens on a Saturday or Sunday, by the time the news editor sits down on Monday morning and they're looking at things to talk about, there's been a fire or whatever or whichever, and they're not thinking about, hey, I'm going to go back and get somebody in Governor Kemp's office to talk about this milestone. So I feel like this is intentional, and I'm underlining the word intentional there. Why is this a problem? If I presented this data to my friends, and I can hear them in the head right now, they would say, gee, the government does things to suit itself, and water is wet, and the sky is blue, and there's nothing unique about this. And they're absolutely right in a lot of ways. I don't take away from that at all. But to me, it calls into question, if we can see this data manipulation, what is the data manipulation that we can't see that's also going on behind the scenes as it relates to cases or hospitalizations or CCU utilization or distribution of ventilators? And that's even more concerning when you then say, okay, I found an anomaly in the data. I want to go and look at the source data and see what's happening, which is what somebody like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has done. They make open records requests to folks like GMA and to folks like the Department of Public Health, and it's been problematic. If you followed that case at all, for the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, the last batch of data they sent, and it's been corrected now, but Georgia Emergency Management Agency sent a big block of data that was all redacted. So it was literally something out of malicious compliance where, okay, here's all the reports, but every line has a black dot over it and you can't see what it says. That's problematic when you're trying to understand what's going on in your government. And if this kind of data is inconsistent data, if it's poor reporting, if it's just some poor schmuck working on the weekends to try and catch up on death reports and this is how it falls in, or if it's intentionally being pushed out. That's where I really have the concerns. It's even more concerning when you know that Governor Kemp has said no open records requests to the Department of Public Health as long as the emergency order is in place. So as long as he keeps extending this emergency order, which is now it's into October, we will never know exactly what's going on there. Now, will some analysis happen a year from now when there's no longer an emergency and it's been 30 days after that and everybody can start to sit down and look at the data? Sure. What's going to happen then? We're all going to go, gee, I wish I knew that information in September. That's the problem with not being able to get this information. That's the problem in my mind with the information not being able to be looked at. I don't want to say somebody's doing something maliciously. That's not what I'm out to do. And in fact, I would rather assume they have positive intent in doing what they're doing. Unfortunately, I'm not in a place where I can say, hey, you know what? The folks at Department of Public Health, when they're putting out the numbers, they're really working hard for us. Let's let them do their job, and we'll look at the open requests later because we feel like they're being forthcoming and honest, and the data is consistent every day. I'm saying exactly the opposite. I'm saying at this point, the data is not consistent. It almost, there's certainly enough evidence here to say it is being manipulated. So now what do we do to really get at that information? And Governor Kemp has said, you're not looking at any of it. So that's where my big concern comes in. All of this said, what is this going to change? Probably nothing. Makes me feel better to kind of share that, this is what we're seeing. I hope maybe other people who are looking at the same data hear the same things. Maybe if enough of us start speaking up, we're going to get more accountability on this. The other thing I want to say on this is that even if I look at all of this data and look at all the other data, I'm not saying that in the whole, when you aggregate it all into a weekly view or a monthly view, that it's inaccurate or all being held back. I'm just saying there's stuff that they may get in on Tuesday that we may not see until Sunday because they don't want it in the papers on Tuesday. And I think that's problematic. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Hope you found that interesting. I'd love to hear comments and thoughts on this. And like I said, I know there are plenty of people with different opinions. I know there are people who say, leave them alone and let them work. I know there are people who say, this is government, you shouldn't expect any better. But maybe I'm one of the funny people who just expects better. And I'm hoping to see some change. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. So that's my last little speech before I go away on vacation. No COVID videos for the next 7 days while I am off enjoying myself and being on a road trip. So I appreciate everybody who watches, and I will be stopping in from time to time into the subreddit and making sure that, updates are happening. I'm really curious on what's going to happen Tuesday and Wednesday of next week as the data gets caught back up. So you may see me post over there. But in generally, I'm trying to get away and take a break from this. So my visits will be limited. If you're interested in seeing kind of what I'm doing on vacation and some of the places I'm visiting and videos I'm shooting, subscribe to this channel. You're going to see a little microphone come up in the corner, up in the top right here in a second. Click on that, subscribe to the channel. The next few videos that I'm publishing will be all about my trip, things I'm seeing along the parkways and the byways, and chasing after lights and conspiracy theories and some other interesting things along the way. So hope you all have a terrific week. Hope you had a great Labor Day holiday weekend. And I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.